Discover how one doctor's amazing act of love for a homeless woman transformed their lives forever. Dr. Emily Carter stepped out of the hospital, the New York skyline sprawled before her like a restless sea. Every evening felt the same: the rushing cabs, flickering neon lights, and crowds who moved with purpose. A third-year attending physician with a reputation for brilliance and compassion, Emily had everything. Yet, sipping the city's stifling air, an uncomfortable pit festered in her stomach. Despite the accolades and long hours spent grinding in the trenches of medicine, a sense of unfulfillment clung to her. Did her work truly resemble impact, or was it just a performance of privilege against the backdrop of suffering? As she walked past the rusting swings of a forgotten park, her attention snagged on a frail figure huddled against a cold wall. Miranda, a homeless woman with wild hair that framed her weary face. Something snapped inside Emily. This was no ordinary case. This woman embodied lost potential. She hesitated. Could she bridge the gap between her perfect life and Miranda's shattered dreams? Suddenly, the lights of her sterile hospital seemed like a distant memory overshadowed by an urgent need to connect, to offer not just a consultation but a lifeline. The moment Emily knelt beside Miranda, she felt an unmistakable pulse of humanity. "Let me help you," she whispered, gently touching Miranda's arm. What began as a simple offer morphed into an inner conflict raging inside her. Despite being a well-respected physician, did she truly possess the power to change this woman's fate? As she began treating Miranda's body, the shadows of her past ambitions emerged: a passion for engineering dulled by circumstances too painful to dredge. Emily silently questioned the system that had failed both of them, sparking a fire that warmed something deep within her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The hospital wasn't just about healing, it was rife with systemic biases, an undercurrent that made her feel complicit. When her colleagues encountered Miranda, they wore thinly veiled scorn in their eyes, whispering judgments that struck Emily's heart like sharp needles. Was she part of a network of indifference cloaked under the guise of professionalism? She experienced shame twist in her gut as she juggled her loyalty to her workplace with her burgeoning friendship with Miranda. Their bond was growing, and so was the unacknowledged fear within her. If she pursued this connection, would she risk her career? She fought the mounting frustration that flooded her senses, asking herself if the cost of compassion was worth it. Just as they leaned into dreams of reclaiming Miranda's lost invention, Emily felt the weight of the world press down harder. Could a homeless woman really challenge the titans of industry? A gnawing doubt turned into debilitating anxiety that echoed in her mind. She wanted to believe in Miranda's brilliance, just as the engineer once saw the unlimited possibilities before her. Yet with every passing day, the pulsing anxiety grew thicker, suffocating Emily's resolve and leaving her standing at a precipice of conflicting hope and despair. A thin thread tied her to Miranda, one she feared would snap as easily as the world dismissed them both. How far could they push against the odds before their shaky bond crumbled under societal pressures? The inexorable clock of their lives ticked louder, urging them to face the uncertainties that separated them from their dreams. Emily's phone buzzed incessantly, each notification a reminder of the responsibilities waiting for her back at the hospital. Yet, as she sat beside Miranda on the cold pavement, those obligations faded against the stark reality they faced. What was she really entangled in? The commitment to her medical career flickered dimly, overshadowed by a growing sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Emily contemplated the true essence of her work. Was she mending lives, or merely managing crises? The differentiation haunted her. She leaned closer to Miranda, who told fascinating stories of her engineering dreams with a fervor that inspired hope in Emily's heart. Vibrant ideas flowed from her, designs that had once spun in her mind but never left the confines of her imagination. In those moments, Emily saw fragments of herself, ambition stifled by irrelevant fears and ambitions haunting her from the past. Emily needed to act, but how? The thought of bringing Miranda's ideas to life was both exhilarating and terrifying. Who would believe in them? Those swirling anxieties crept back, whispering doubts that this dream could be as fragile as their threadbare reality. The feeling of vulnerability gnawed at her. It was an opportunity to resuscitate not just Miranda's dreams, but her own, yet the risks loomed like shadows at twilight, turning her thoughts inward. Emily sought that familiar bravado she'd always possessed, an engineer's mindset demanding precision and resilience. She began to devise a plan, one that could potentially bridge the chasm between Miranda's reality and the marketplace that had forgotten her. Emily's heart raced as she envisioned a prototype, a means to breathe life into Miranda's concept. All that was needed was funding, a support system, and they would contend with the world that had kept them at bay. But in her fervor, Emily felt an insidious fear creep in. Would this pursuit jeopardize her position? Would her colleagues see her as a traitor for investing so deeply in someone society had abandoned? The faces of her peers and mentors played out in her mind, their disapproval roiling within her. She had earned their respect, could she now risk it for something perceived as a folly? All of that was overshadowed by the flicker in Miranda's eyes, a fire ignited by this unexpected companionship, a connection that stripped away the superficial layers of their lives. It was in these moments that Emily's resolve solidified. She had the power to ignite change not only in Miranda's life but within the rigid structures surrounding them. Days turned into sleepless nights as she began drafting plans, scouring for resources, any sign of support. Emily channeled her frustration, transformed her doubts into determination, and concluded that she couldn't allow the world to dictate their potential. Then, a thought gripped her: the pitch. A presentation that could convince investors to believe in their vision. She would need to share Miranda's story, a narrative steeped in resilience and creativity. For the first time, she could tell a story that combined her medical expertise and engineering aspirations. What if they could present this idea to the very same people who had shunned Miranda before? As the pieces fell together in her mind, Emily felt the walls of constraint beginning to crumble. Yet, with each breakthrough, she couldn't determine if she was on the verge of monumental success or impending disaster. Determined, she reached out to Miranda, sensing that it was time to introduce her friend to a broader world, a world they were about to challenge together. And just when a flicker of hope began to illuminate their path, a heavy, unexpected knock at the door shattered that fragile moment. The gravity of the past loomed, ready to challenge everything they had begun to build. Would Emily conquer her fears, or would the approaching storm extinguish their burgeoning dreams? Emily's heart raced as she approached the door, the heavy knock echoing through her thoughts like a drumbeat of foreboding. The image of Miranda's eager smile stood in contrast to the uncertainty that seeped into her bones. She inhaled sharply, readying herself to confront whatever challenge awaited them. "Emily, are you okay?" Miranda's voice broke through, tugging at her focus. The simplicity of that question anchored Emily, reminding her of the mission they had embraced. "Yeah, just give me a second." She took a deep breath, her pulse still racing, then turned the handle and opened the door. Standing there was a lean man in a worn jacket, his face marked by lines of hardship. The moment his eyes met Emily's, a flicker of recognition sparked. It was Ben, a fellow physician whose career had unraveled when a scandal shook the foundation of his reputation. She felt her own doubts surfacing, a reminder of the whispers she might soon face. "Emily," he began, his voice heavy, "I heard what you're doing with Miranda. How did I have my ways? Look, I need to talk to you. This isn't about old grudges, it's about what you're trying to achieve. You've got a unique opportunity here." His earnestness pierced through Emily's defenses. There was very little she could dismiss with Ben. He understood the pressures of their profession, yet a flicker of resentment reminded her of the betrayals that had come before. She wasn't ready to invite the chaos of their past into this new venture. "Miranda is counting on me," Emily said cautiously, gauging the sincerity in Ben's expression. "We're building something together." "I can help," he urged. I know investors who were once interested in projects like this. You just need a strong pitch and the right connections. His eyes darted to Miranda, then back to Emily, earnest and unyielding. Emily hesitated, the dance of temptation and caution twirled within her. Was she prepared to trust someone she had once viewed as an adversary? Ben, I appreciate that, but I'm not sure you understand what's at stake here, she replied, her voice firm. This isn't just a pitch, it's about Miranda's life. I can't risk her dreams for anything less than absolute assurance. He nodded, the understanding softening his features. I get that. But you also need to broaden your horizons. Change often comes from unexpected places. You taught me that once, long ago. Looking at Miranda, the spirit of resilience shining in her eyes, Emily felt the weight of a decision weighing on her heart. She had fought for her voice, for her autonomy, and this collaboration was meant to honor that newfound strength. Would leaning on Ben, an embodiment of her past, offer the stability they sought, or would it unravel everything they were striving to protect? What do you think? Emily turned to Miranda, seeking guidance in her friend's expression. Eyes wide, Miranda posed a simple question: do we trust him? Trust. It was a fragile concept, yet what they were forging was built on that very foundation. Emily realized the choice was not just about Ben, it was about her willingness to embrace vulnerability and accept that true progress often meant confronting uncomfortable truths. I'll think about it, she said at last, a surge of determination rising within her. But if we move forward with him, it'll be under our terms. The resolve in her words solidified the path ahead, and as they closed the door, an air of anticipation enveloped them. They were walking into the light, yet shadows threatened to edge closer. Would they be able to outmaneuver the ghosts of their pasts, or was this merely the beginning of an uphill battle? The thought ignited a spark of hunger in Emily's belly. It wasn't just about crafting an idea, it was about weaving narratives of resilience for all to believe. But with this spark also came mounting pressure. Ben would be waiting for her answer, and soon enough, she would have to face the echoes of doubt that she assiduously tried to bury. As they contemplated the next steps, Emily realized that every choice would ripple forward, and the weight of those decisions rested on her shoulders. The time had come to cultivate the courage needed. What did she truly believe in, and how would she bring that belief to life? Delivery was imminent, and the gears of fate were already shifting. Time was running short as they prepared for the pitch that could change everything. The winds of change were about to blow, but would they sail or sink? Emily awoke the next day with a sense of urgency that clawed at her insides. The sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating the chaos of scattered papers and half-finished sketches that littered her desk. There was a method in the madness, she reminded herself, as she sifted through ideas that swirled in her mind like a tempest. She needed to chart a path forward, both for herself and for Miranda. She stared at the ideas about their project, her heart racing. The concept of a collaborative healthcare initiative for underserved communities could be revolutionary, but the prospect of pitching it stirred a cocktail of excitement and dread. The thought of potentially involving Ben only compounded her anxiety. Could she leverage his connections without sacrificing her integrity? Her decision-making skills felt clouded. She realized she was confronting more than just the project. She was tangled in her past, her own failures and misjudgments haunting her. Ben may have provided the lifeline they desperately needed, but his history loomed larger. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative from the ashes of doubt. Emily took a deep breath and gathered her research notes, surrounded by the faint hum of the city waking up outside. She needed to articulate their vision with crystal clarity. The thought of her patients, their struggles and aspirations pushed her forward. She could not afford to drown in memories of past betrayal. This was about rising together, about possibility. With each word she penned, idea after idea amalgamated into a clear vision, one that painted vivid pictures of hope, resilience, and empowerment. The vision stood steadfast against the specters of fear that whispered you can't and you shouldn't. She would frame their initiative as an opportunity for healing, not just for the patients but for herself as she faced a personal reckoning. Several hours later, Emily found herself pacing in front of her computer screen. The pitch was taking shape, but her mind still flickered back to Ben's offer. Should she meet him to discuss terms? Could she negotiate a balance that did not compromise Miranda's dreams or her own? What do you want to accomplish here, Emily? She asked herself, her reflection staring back. Having a seat at the table with Ben did not equate to surrendering her authority, it could mean strengthening their resolve against the tide of obstacles awaiting them. An empowering realization dawning, she picked up her phone, made the call to Ben, and set a meeting for that afternoon. She could lead the conversation on her terms, assert the boundaries and expectations that would ensure they stayed true to their mission. No more rumors could drown her aspirations. She was ready to confront the shadows. As the hour approached, Emily felt a cocktail of apprehension and hope coursing through her. She dressed meticulously, a black jacket that spoke of professionalism paired with a bright scarf that splashed color against the seriousness she was shaking off. Today, she was embracing her identity not just as a physician, but as a beacon of change. When she arrived at the cafe, Ben was already waiting. The lines etched across his face seemed softer now, and as her eyes met his, she felt a fleeting notion of willingness flicker in her chest. Transformations weren't devoid of trust, they required the courage to accept vulnerability. Emily, he greeted, a hint of warmth in his tone. Thanks for meeting me. I know this isn't easy. I know what will be on the table, Ben, she replied firmly, anticipation flaring in her voice. But let us clarify something crucial, it's my way or no way. Are you in? His expression reflected both wariness and intrigue, and in that moment, the stakes soared higher than either had anticipated. Whatever their hearts had once harbored could not come into play now. It was a moment for action, defense, and perhaps, a surprising alliance. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as the potential for what lay ahead unfolded before her. Could she navigate this unexpected partnership while holding true to her convictions? Time would tell, and she felt the shadow of doubt inch closer as she framed her resolve. The room hummed with uncertainty, and as she leaned forward, ready to unveil her vision, she understood that this was a pivotal decision. The past still lurked, yet she was poised to rewrite what she had believed defined her journey. Let us discuss how we can make this work, she said with determination. Each word held weight, a call to the future, an acceptance of the past, and the undeniable investment she was willing to make. As they finally dove in, a tethering of fate sparked between them, illuminating differing ambitions intertwined with a shared hope. Just then, a phone notification ripped through the moment, and Emily's heart sank as she recognized the name flickering on the screen. It was a notification from a journal stating they wanted to publish articles on the upcoming pitch. Would this turn the heat of public scrutiny on her once again, or could it transform this venture into the very lifeline she sought? The stakes were shifting once more, and she could feel the pulse of change throbbing around her. Emily felt her heart race at the sight of the notification. Each word rippled through her mind, amplifying her pre-existing sense of vulnerability. The thought of opening herself up to public scrutiny was daunting. What if she stumbled in her pitch? What if people recognized her past failures? Driven by fear, she fought against an instinct to conceal this endeavor, questioning whether the spotlight would strengthen or corrupt her mission, yet beneath this torrent of anxiety lay an ember of determination. Every setback had sculpted her resolve, and today she was standing on a new precipice. She forced herself to focus on the conversation with Ben. They both had a chance to redefine their legacies, but first, they needed to synchronize their vision without collateral damage to either party. Emily? Ben's voice broke her from her reverie, drawing her back to the moment. Are you okay? Yeah, she swallowed hard, redirecting her energy. I'm ready. I've lined out what I want to achieve. She laid out the vision, articulating the gaps she observed in healthcare access for underserved communities. As she spoke passionately, she noticed Ben's demeanor shift from cautious to engaged. For the first time, she saw glimmers of alignment in his eyes. He seemed receptive, perhaps eager to collaborate on a shared journey. Each challenge she addressed felt like a formidable wall, but she was armed with the conviction to dismantle it. Ben nodded at intervals, sometimes interjecting with thoughts that went beyond mere support. They began to brainstorm strategies, translating her ideals into an actionable plan. Their dialogue flowed with an electricity she hadn't anticipated, revealing a surprising depth to their partnership. Every idea seemed to echo with potential, ordering the chaos in her mind into coherent aspirations, but as excitement surged within her, fear simultaneously gnawed at the edges. What if he didn't stay true to the terms they discussed? What if he reverted to old habits she'd witnessed before? The flicker of doubt was a weight pressing on her heart, but she was adamant about finding a way to mitigate it without tearing at the fabric of their growing alliance. "Let's talk about transparency," she suggested cautiously, her voice steady. "For this to work, we need to establish open lines of communication." Ben's eyebrows raised, but he quickly nodded. "I agree. Transparency is crucial, not just between us, but with our future partners and the communities we aim to serve." In that moment, something shifted. The complexity of the situation started to clarify. They weren't merely navigating business, they were embarking on a journey where authentic intentions could birth genuine change. If they could establish a foundation of honest dialogue, Emily felt that she might finally dispel the ghosts from her past and find a renewed sense of purpose. As they continued to hash out further details, the looming decision about the article publication played at the back of her mind. Paradoxically, the prospect of being publicly visible illuminated her uncertainty but also invigorated her resolve. Perhaps this project's success was contingent upon embracing the scrutiny rather than fleeing from it. It was time to step away from the shadows and cast her light publicly. "I know these challenges may seem overwhelming, but we've been given an opportunity, one that could redefine healthcare in our communities," she mumbled, a newfound conviction rising in her chest. "Right," Ben replied, his voice steady, "but we have to strategize. Let's set milestones and evaluate our progress regularly. That way, we can hold each other accountable." Each interaction shifted the balance of power, with Emily feeling increasingly empowered. She wasn't merely accepting a partnership, she was cementing her role as a leader and a visionary. With their discussion drawing to a close, Emily felt a unique mixture of possibility and fear as they scheduled their next meeting. Yet she couldn't shake off the sense of impending scrutiny that awaited her. Her dreams felt attainable, yet woven into the fabric of that aspiration lay the potential for public judgment. What would their next meeting unveil? Would she feel liberated or exposed as they continued to make strides? As she gathered her things and stood to leave, she glanced at Ben, searching his expression for any hint of his true intentions. Would he truly collaborate in a way that honored her ambitions? The heaviness of unknowing settled in, and as she exited the cafe, the weight of her choices pressed against her like an anchor. She took a deep breath, feeling exhilaration competing against concern. If she wanted the world to see her vision, she would have to resist the urge to disappear into safety. The next chapter of her life was poised to unfold, and it was vitally clear, embracing courage was now her only option. As she stepped into the bustling street, a deafening notification drowned out her thoughts. Another update, this time regarding the potential funding partners interested in their project. Her pulse quickened. This venture was accelerating at an unexpected pace, and there was no turning back now. How much would she be willing to share, and at what cost? The notification blinked incessantly on her phone, demanding her attention. Heart racing, Emily tiptoed around the sudden surge of anxiety. Each funding partner named brought both promise and pressure. Expectations began to coil around her like a tightening noose. Was she ready for this? The thought reverberated relentlessly, filled with echoes from her past. Yet, it cradled a burgeoning resolve. This time she could wield that pressure, harness it rather than let it crush her. She scrolled through the updates, absorbing each name, each opportunity. As she caught a glimpse of an organization renowned for its innovative healthcare solutions, her thoughts spiraled. What if they said yes? Would she hold on to her vision, or would the allure of success pull her toward a path that served someone else's agenda? Clarity wigged like a light bulb flickering, and she pushed the thought aside, reminding herself of the values she had espoused in her discussions with Ben. They had plans to discuss strategy, and she must remain steadfast in her focus. While she walked through the crowded street, the city's cacophony was drowned out by the racing thoughts in her mind. She found a nearby bench and sat down, needing a moment to breathe, reflect, and mentally sort through her ambitions. Immovable doubt scratched at her consciousness, whispering that she had always been an outsider, never quite fitting into the world of high-stakes negotiations and public ventures. But now, armed with clarity from her conversation with Ben, she acknowledged that the narrative could change. The past didn't define her, and embracing her unique experiences could be an advantage. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, allowing her mind to wander. Her previous failures began to coalesce into valuable lessons, resilience forged in hardship, perspectives twisting around each hardship she faced. Every rejection, every misstep had molded her vision. She discovered that unlike before, she no longer craved approval or validation. Instead, she sought transformation not only for herself but for the communities she longed to uplift. As her confidence rose, a sudden ring from her phone jolted her back. It was Ben. "Hey Emily, I just got off a call with one of the potential funding partners, and they are very enthusiastic about our proposal. They want to meet us next week." His tone was instilled with the excitement that had formerly eluded her. "That's great. But, do you think they'll appreciate our vision? I mean, what if they have expectations that steer us off course?" The words tumbled out, an instinctual defense mechanism, an anchor casting her thoughts into turbulent waters. "I think we need to be forthright, lay it all out on the table. It's not just about securing funding, it's about standing our ground. They need to know what we stand for." Ben's voice remained steady, like a lighthouse amid her stormy thoughts, grounding her in reality. "You're right," she breathed. "I need to prepare. We must present our plan clearly, our objectives, everything. Transparency has to be our guiding principle if we're backtracking." "Exactly. Let us outline each segment for our presentation. We can brainstorm some potential questions they might have." His eagerness was palpable through the line, nudging her toward a fresh resolve. As they finalized their meeting preparations, Emily felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the opportunity she had yearned for. No longer would she allow her past to be a shackle. Instead, it was now a part of her narrative, one that could add depth to her purpose. They wrapped up the conversation, and she made her way home, heart swelled with determination. She was poised at an unprecedented juncture in her career. The winds of change had shifted, urging her to stand firmly within the path of her dreams. Yet, an ominous shadow remained. How much of her previous experiences should she reveal? The complexity of decision weighed heavily on her. Should she fling the door wide open and allow the memories to linger, or should she build her new legacy as a pristine slate, glossed over with optimism? The more she considered, the more she realized that these questions weren't trivial. They were crucial to her identity as a leader. As night fell, she sat at her desk, inundated with notes for the presentation and reflections on her own identity. Her fingers hesitated over her keyboard, each stroke a question that echoed through her inner turmoil. The time had come to confront the demons of her past. She had to decide how much of herself she was willing to unveil. Taking a deep breath, she opened a blank document. The real challenge had just begun, reconciling her past with her ambitions. Could she brave the risk of full transparency? Another ping from her phone caught her attention. An invitation to join a public speakership opportunity flashed across her screen, the words both enticing and terrifying. The moment had arrived to confront what she could become: a speaker, a leader, a transformational figure. How would she weave her journey into her presentation? What would she choose to reveal of herself, and would that decision forge the path to authenticity or result in unforgiving vulnerability? As Emily stared at her phone, the glowing screen illuminating her face, her pulse quickened. The invitation felt heavy with potential. The prospect of stepping into the light as a public speaker both thrilled and terrified her. She had always been the one in the background, supporting roles and administrative tasks. Now, she was being called to share her story, her truth. She took a moment to breathe, centering her focus amidst the maelstrom of thoughts swirling around her. Was this the next logical step? As the weight of the decision pressed down on her, the implications danced around her mind. Public speaking could solidify her vision, it could shape perceptions of her work. Yet, it demanded a level of exposure that made her stomach churn. Would she show the world the rawness of her journey, or would she dress it in the polished veneer of professional success? She flicked through her notes for the upcoming meeting with the funding partner, her ambition clashing with the flickering doubts. The prospect was exhilarating, the chance to advocate for healing and transformation. What would she say? How would she say it? She needed to present her authentic self while simultaneously appealing to their ideals and expectations. Clarity was crucial. On a whim, she opened a new document and began typing. Tonight, I stand before you to share not just my successes, but the struggles that forged them. My path was riddled with uncertainty, each step marked by a lesson begging for acknowledgement. A flicker of empowerment surged through her as the words flowed, nearly spilling over onto the digital page. Giving voice to her journey became almost cathartic, an act of reclaiming her narrative. She picked up on the rhythm and cadence of her thoughts, discovering contours of her personality and spirit that had long been muted by self-doubt. What had once been fear shifted to strategy. She was in control of her story, and she could influence how it resonated with others, but with each line she penned, an unsettling truth crept in. The fear returned, rising from the depths to wrap around her like a cold fog. What if they dissected her past, looking for weakness? What if she couldn't embody the transformational figure she was beginning to realize she could be? What if she was still that scared girl waiting for someone to validate her existence? As the clock ticked ominously, Emily pushed away from her desk. Taking a moment to self-soothe, she wandered to the window. Outside, the city lights flickered like stars grounded in a restless maze of humanity. Stories intertwined in the shadows, struggles woven into the urban fabric. She sighed deeply, reminding herself that vulnerability was often the birthplace of connection. Looking back at her desk, she mulled over the connection between her experiences and the committee's likely expectations. They would want to hear the polished narrative, the triumph over adversity. But was that truly her story? Would it serve her purpose, or would it take her down a path that distanced her from her core values? With renewed vigor, she returned to her computer. It was time to get tactical. How could she present her past not as a burden, but as a vital thread in the tapestry of her mission? Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she brainstormed the elements of a compelling narrative, backing her ambitions with data-driven impact, and blending it with relatable personal stories that emphasized courage and resilience. Still, a small voice inside warned her about the tightrope she was walking. Could she share the details without exposing herself to judgment? Transparency, as Ben had suggested, was both liberating and fraught with peril. Would she still be respected if they glimpsed behind the curtain? The discussion was necessary and unavoidable. Preparation for both the speakership and presentation loomed ahead, but one fundamental question remained unanswered. How could she navigate the tension of self-disclosure while asserting her strength? With an almost desperate determination, she looked at the calendar. Only days separated her from the meeting and the speaking opportunity. Time was pressing, and the anxiety coiled around her like a live wire. Little did she realize that her journey of self-discovery had only just begun. She had to face more than just her audience. She would soon confront the very essence of what it meant to be a true leader. As she settled back into her thoughts, the ping of another message interrupted her. This time, it was Ben asking if they could meet to go over her presentation. Would he understand the complexities of the narrative she was constructing? The clock was ticking, and one inevitable truth remained: the time had come to face her past and greet her future head-on. Would she receive Ben's support, or would she discover that her journey was more solitary than she had hoped? Emily paced her small apartment, the anticipation of her meeting with Ben mingling with her swirling thoughts. The message from him lingered in her mind like a half-formed plan, at once a promise of support and a reminder of her vulnerability. She grabbed a notepad and began jotting down key points for their discussion. Her heart raced as she considered how much she was willing to share. The clock ticked louder, each second amplifying her doubts. She thought of Ben's endless encouragement, how he believed in her vision even when she faltered. But did he grasp the depth of her fears? The complexities of blending her narrative with the professional expectations of their funders? It felt daunting to bridge that gap, to stand tall on the delicate balance between authenticity and artifice. As she waited for Ben, the reality of her dual roles pressed heavily on her, the advocate and the vulnerable human. Presenting herself as a leader meant shedding layers of self-doubt and embracing the power of her story. But she was not merely stepping onto a stage, she was entering a crucible, testing the mettle of her character and resolve. When Ben arrived, his easy smile brought an unexpected wave of calm. They settled at her kitchen table, surrounded by scattered papers and notes. "I thought we were going to brainstorm ideas," he said, leaning forward. "We are, but I need to know how to present my truth effectively without losing myself in the process," Emily admitted, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The tremor in her voice betrayed her internal conflict. "Let us unpack that," Ben replied, his tone supportive, but focused. "What does sharing your truth mean to you, and how does it connect to your audience?" Emily took a breath, collecting her thoughts. "I want them to see the journey, the struggle and the growth, not just the polished outcome. I want to show that healing comes from a place of vulnerability but still maintain their respect for my work." He nodded, processing her words. "So it's about framing your narrative. You're not just highlighting the challenges, you're emphasizing how they shaped your purpose. Maybe what you need to focus on is why you're sharing these truths. What is the call to action?" The question stirred something within her. A clear vision began to take form, one that illuminated her path. "If I can show them that my experiences made me resilient, then they can see how our work can empower others facing similar challenges." Ben leaned back, a smile playing on his lips. "That's powerful, Emily. You're not just telling a story, you're inviting them to be part of a solution." With a renewed sense of determination, Emily started scribbling down her ideas, feeling the tide of anxiety ebbing away. In the midst of their conversation, she found herself at a crossroads, contemplating her commitment to transparency and the potential repercussions. What if she laid bare her experiences only to receive backlash? That said, she continued, a tinge of hesitation creeping into her voice, what if they don't connect? What if they see my story as a weakness? Ben's response was firm. "It's not about them, it's about your resolve. When you speak, you're not just sharing the past, you're tying it to your vision for the future. That authenticity can be your strongest asset." The clarity of Ben's words held weight, nudging her closer to the realization that vulnerability, entwined with purpose, could forge a connection deeper than perceived judgment. As their conversation deepened, she recognized snippets of courage within herself. Each word exchanged transformed her intimidation into a catalyst for growth. It was a revelation, a moment where she understood that the leap into the unknown could also be a leap towards liberation. But doubt continued to lurk, waiting for an opportunity to rear its ugly head. The clock, ever relentless, reminded her of the approaching deadline for the presentation. With every passing minute, the weight of her decision pressed more heavily. "Emily, you've got this," Ben said, sensing her internal struggle. "Preparation can only take you so far. Dive into your story and trust that your authenticity will resonate with the audience." His faith instilled a flicker of hope. Perhaps she was slowly unraveling the profound leader she could be. Still, a deeper question resonated within her. If she embraced her past, what unexplored parts of herself would she uncover? As they finalized the elements of her presentation, Emily felt the horizon of her potential stretching before her. Yet, the uncertainty lingered like a crucial embrace. Today, she had taken an important step toward ownership of her narrative, but the journey was far from over. With their discussion drawing to a close, Emily glanced at her reflection in the kitchen window. The face that stared back was building toward something fresh, alive with the spark of self-discovery. Little did she know that the very act of stepping into her own narrative would soon demand greater courage than she ever anticipated. What lay beyond that threshold, she would soon discover a test of will, as the moments of truth began to unfold. As Ben prepared to leave, a thought struck her. Could her past transcend into the very fuel necessary for her mission? The anticipation of answering that question ignited a fire in her belly. It was time to confront not just an audience, but the full weight of her own evolving identity. Emily stared blankly at the space where her reflection had just been, her mind racing with the implications of what she was about to do. The discussion with Ben had shifted something within her. Words of power and vulnerability echoed in her mind, reshaping her sense of purpose. As she shook off the last layers of doubt, she resolved to embrace this challenge. She needed to dig deeper, not only into her narrative but into the very essence of who she was. Over the next few days, Emily's routine transformed into a dual process of preparation and reflection. She practiced her presentation in front of her living room mirror, each iteration revealing fragments of herself she had kept hidden. In the solitude of her apartment, she allowed raw emotion to wash over her, memories of hardship intertwined with the hope they had spawned. Each practice session became a rehearsal not just of words but of self-acceptance. She was learning that the story she shared had the potential to resonate not in spite of her challenges, but because of them. Yet, the specter of doubt still loomed. Each echo of her voice during rehearsal faced her with the question, what if this wasn't enough? What if revealing her past invited misunderstanding? The pressure mounted as she got closer to the day of her presentation. One evening, while eating dinner alone, Emily felt the familiar pangs of anxiety clawing at her resolve. Feeding herself had become a chore, every bite was a reminder of the urgency of her mission. She closed her eyes, briefly abandoning the chaos of her thoughts. It was during this fragile moment that a revelation struck. The power of storytelling lay not just in the outcome, but in the act of sharing the journey itself. It wasn't about crafting a flawless narrative, it was about authenticity and connection. Motivated by this newfound understanding, she decided to reach out to former colleagues whose experiences mirrored hers. They had faced similar struggles, and their insights resonated with her need for solidarity in vulnerability. Each conversation unearthed new angles to her narrative, enriching it with diverse perspectives. It was refreshing, invigorating even, to engage in dialogue with people who understood the weight of fear and the liberating power of honesty. As her confidence swelled, Emily began exploring her delivery style. She experimented not only with words but also with gestures, embodying her message in a way that felt true to her. The flicker of disbelief transformed into a blazing fire. She dared to envision standing before an audience fully engaged in her truth. She pictured them leaning forward, not as critics but as co-adventurers on her journey. Then came the evening before her presentation. The clock struck 10, and Emily sat on her bed, surrounded by scattered notes, splashes of ideas, and ink stains on her hands, marks of her labor. She picked up her phone and opened the messaging app. With bated breath, she typed a message to Ben. "I'm nervous but ready. I think I know what I want to say, but I want to add a surprise element that speaks to my truth." The ellipses at the end conveyed her uncertainty, the question of whether she was overstepping. As she hit send, anticipation surged through her veins. She had aligned her thoughts, her feelings, and her intentions, preparing to convey a raw version of herself. Yet beneath that excitement lay a fragile thread of fear. Could she truly capture the essence of her experiences? Would the audience welcome her vulnerability, or would they turn away? In that moment of introspection, the gravity of her impending engagement settled over her shoulders. She understood this was not merely a presentation, it was a significant step toward reclaiming her narrative, an assertion of her worth in the face of doubt. As sleep ebbed closer, Emily's final thoughts were not of fear but of fierce determination. She was ready to address the weight of her past, not as a burden but as a vital part of her mission. It was more than delivering words, it was about delivering herself, what awaited her on the stage. She wondered with a whisper of excitement mingled with trepidation. The time had come to face not only her audience but the very essence of her identity, an identity that, perhaps, was still in formation. Little did she realize that a single moment could lead to discoveries far beyond her current aspirations. As dawn broke over New York, Emily stood before the mirror, reflecting the culmination of her arduous journey. Gone were the flickers of self-doubt that once held her captive. Instead, she saw a confident woman, ready to merge her roles as a healer and an advocate. Today was not just another day, it was her moment of transformational clarity. The venue was bustling, a vibrant hub filled with innovators and stakeholders eager for the promising vision she had worked tirelessly to embody. With her notes tucked securely in her bag, Emily felt a unique blend of adrenaline and peace as she advanced to the stage. Every step was a testament to the convergence of her past struggles and her present resilience. As she began her presentation, her voice resonated with power, infused with authenticity. She wove together elements of her personal narrative: the battles of doubt, the joy of rediscovery, and the fiery passion ignited by her connection with Miranda. Rather than avoidance, she embraced vulnerability, showing the audience not just her triumphs but also the lessons born from hardship. It was liberating. Spotlights replaced shadows as she transformed fear into strength, each word anchoring her identity in a profound, uplifting way. The audience was captivated. Emily's candidness about her struggles struck the hearts of many. She spoke not just of aspirations but of genuine healing, emphasizing that their initiative wasn't merely a project, it was a mission to bring hope to underserved communities. The applause that followed her final words was thunderous, but the loudest affirmation in her heart whispered, "You belong here. This is your purpose." Excitement surged through her veins. The recognition was palpable, not solely from the audience's applause but from her own validation. It dawned on her that she wasn't just reclaiming her narrative, she was levying her knowledge and experiences to motivate those in the room to believe in similar transformations. Emily stepped down from the stage, head high and spirit soaring, knowing without a doubt that she had made a tangible impact. Days later, the media covered her presentation, spotlighting both her visionary project and her empowering message. The endorsement from influential figures galvanized interest and spurred critical funding. Emily felt a wave of elation wash over her. Not only had she secured the necessary resources for the initiative, but she had also redefined her place within the medical community. For the first time, she could see herself as a leader, someone capable of inspiring change beyond the confines of her medical practice. A brainstorm meeting with Miranda illuminated their plans for future healthcare strategies, the two of them working harmoniously to elevate their shared vision. Each interaction reinforced Emily's identity, now aligned with her medical prowess and her intricate understanding of systemic challenges. As the months progressed, the initiative blossomed, directly influencing countless lives. Emily's competence became widely recognized, drawing invitations to speak at conferences and panel discussions. Each time she took the podium, she carried with her the fire ignited during that pivotal moment of her presentation. The stakes were higher, yet her resolve was unyielding. Emily had conquered the self-imposed barriers that once threatened to stifle her potential. She was propelled by the recognition she received not for mere accolades, but for authentic transformation that was reshaping the narrative not just of her life but of the countless individuals she sought to help. Looking back, she acknowledged the power of vulnerability, understanding that her willingness to face her fears had been the catalyst for growth. Emily had transitioned from a talented physician unsure of her impact to a dynamic agent of change, armed with compassion and courage. In that bustling city, amid the relentless rhythm of life, she saw a new horizon. The fusion of her past and present fueled her ambition, and as she walked into her future, she did so with unwavering confidence. A steady pulse guiding her every step forward. Consequently, she was not only transforming lives, she was living proof of what it meant to embrace one's story and turn it into a legacy. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment below your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. We want to know your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful ending. Don't wait even one more second to share. Show that you're a true fan of personal overcoming stories.